Continuing part 2, the world of the names. Forbearance towards Amalek. So there is ever the struggle with Amalek. And ever again there is this tendency in man to forbear with Amalek, or at least with something in Amalek. It is the forbearance with one's own conditions of physical existence which lead to forbearing with Amalek. For too hard a struggle with Amalek might imply giving up certain comforts, certain habits of life. It might even imply change of one's whole style of life, which one is so attached to in spite of everything. One is willing to go a long way, but one had rather not go the whole hog. Amalek is the impediment on the journey across the desert, the journey of life in captivity to development, to a life of an entirely different quality, to the promised land, which implies exactly the opposite of a promised land after a journey of one's own development, one's own abilities, one's own knowledge. All the weaknesses on that journey fall into the hands of Amalek. When the first king reigns in biblical Israel, there ensues the great struggle with Amalek. Amalek is defeated by King Saul, but then suddenly crops up the commiseration with this force of evolution. People are not very quick at pitying others, but as soon as one's own material existence is at stake, one has all sorts of motives to spare Amalek. Material existence includes everything that our society has so far considered normal, man's fair share. Thus, Saul kills much of Amalek. Man is ready to give up a great deal for the sake of the return to God, but the useful things about Amalek one wants to save. For one may use it safely, may not one? In fact, one thinks one cannot do without it. And the king of Amalek, Agag, is spared, for Agag pleads for his life. He is willing to be made into a servant. The will to live of the force of evolution is terribly tenacious. It is the most pronounced will to live. Tragic and sentimental, the pig, according to ancient lore, an expression of this force of evolution in the phenomenal form in the animal world, squeals heart-rendingly when it is killed. The sheep, the pigeon, expression of the reverse suffers it to happen. At best, they look at the butcher sadly, questioningly, or so it seems, and as some people maintain, sometimes weeping. But the pig squeals. Agag tries to rouse pity, for indeed he is nothing but this force of development which people are now going to strike down. Agag also squeals in man. He is beyond himself and mad with fear that anything may happen to him. And the king of biblical Israel, the primordial king, from the point of view of our world, spares Agag. He feels commiseration. The first king of Benjamin. The prophet Samuel sees the danger. He realizes that a person who expresses commiseration with his own potentialities of development and existence cannot be a king. The king is to go the way towards God consistently and should subordinate all other motives to it. This commiseration implies sternness in another plane. As it is, Saul becomes harsh with the priests of Nob, whom he massacres. Let me repeat, it is not commiseration with regard to anything outside ourselves. In that respect, man does not dispose of an excess. In that respect, he had better be improved in the sense of cultivating more understanding for others. First and foremost, the issue is the commiseration with the egocentric, vital impetus of Amalek. One does not want to kill the principle of Amalek within oneself, though, on the other hand, one is prepared to go a long way as regards Amalek. The king of Benjamin will have to be shoved aside first. He has fulfilled his mission, preserving Amalek's life, however strange it may sound, in the same way man eats of the tree of knowledge, and in doing so fulfills a mission. For at this juncture the body can come, development can start now. The purpose of creation, acting gratuitously, becomes manifest. Owing to this, sin, but henceforth the other force, the neshama force, comes into operation, and the struggle for the return commences. First, the king of Benjamin disappears. He will return in another life. The league between David and Jonathan, the son of Saul, speaks thereof. In a new world, these two kings of Benjamin and of Judah, of Rachel and of Leah, will be together. Saul is the king of the physical side. David is the king of the neshama side. As soon as the body can go the way of development in creation. The neshama is brought into the body, and with her comes the force of the return. This is the new king. That is King David. Samuel, the prophet, makes it known to Saul, which feels commiseration with the principle and so-called use of Amalek cannot be the principle of biblical Israel. Immediately on meeting Saul the next day, Samuel kills Agag, who had been overjoyed at having been spared, but then suddenly was all the more horrified. Having been spared owing to the king's compassion, Agag had spent the night with his wife. That night she conceived. Thus came Haman. And this Haman, in the world of the exile, is again confronted with one of Benjamin. Himself inexorable, grim like a force of nature, executor in the world of natural laws and in the world of Ahasuerus. In such a world, it is only an Amalek that can be executor, counselor. It is only such a one that fits in with the harsh and inexorable. With foolishness, says the Ivri. Agag's life is spared only to bring death and unhappiness. One does not realize it when one is so much concerned about the basis of one's conditions of life. In the world of the exile, Agag causes nothing but fear and despair. It is the pattern of the tale of the serpent. The serpent, too, seems to promise indispensable things. What the serpent predicted seemed to be so logical, reasonable, correct. There again, man is filled with pity in concerning his existence on earth. There, too, the serpent brings death and sorrow. In the world of the exile, they meet again, this Saul and Agag, this time in their descendants, Mordecai and Haman. Now, Mordecai can only act gratuitously. He can only follow the most difficult way, which to the world is without any prospect hopeless, really and truly gratuitous. Any other path would have been easier. This, verily, is so great about this world, the world in which God is hidden, where man is that he must act. Haman and Mordecai on their way to the exile. There is a story how the way is from the world of the temple to that of the exile. Mordecai also goes that way, and Haman too travels along that way. The world of the exile cannot do without Amalek. Again, there arises a situation in which Amalek can only subsist if man gives him the chance. On this difficult and dreary journey, Haman has nothing to eat. He begs food from Mordecai. Then Haman too comes into the world of Ahasuerus, and now he can act. To the force of development, it is only the natural laws that count. Pity cannot be defined in terms of natural law. To natural law, pity. Compassion is only perceived as a lack of consistent output of energy, as a point of weakness, as inability to assert oneself with the grimness of natural law. In the computer brains of natural forces, it is put down as weakness, as a chance to break through, to take them by surprise, to swallow them up, to move them out of the way, and that is what will happen. It cannot be otherwise. Haman's life hangs by a thread, like that of Agag, for it depends on man whether this force of development shall come along in this world. Is man going to eat of the tree of knowledge, in spite of God's command not to do so? In spite of the inner voice in our life, the voice of our neshama, not to do it, lest we should be ashamed of ourselves? Is man going to eat of it all the same, or is he not? Man eats thereof, for man says, I must live, must I not? I have to build my house, look after my family. And this is how this world starts. This world overcrowded with people, cities, motorways, hotels, universities, hospitals, theaters, and so on and so forth. But supposing man did not do it, what a different world it would be. Man would even live in paradise. But alas, he gives food to Haman, and Haman comes along with him into this world. It happens every day, every moment. People think it a matter of course, quite normal. Abel could have slain Cain. Always there is that same crucial point where the life of Amalek is in our hand. Man is offered a great deal. Thus, there is the story of Cain and Abel. Cain is the expression of the physical body, of what is developing, growing. Abel is the name of the defenseless, the other, the neshama, the Ivri. Abel in Hebrew is Huel, and that means nothing, vanity. The other is of no account here. People derive no advantages from it. It vexes Cain that this nothing does give admittance to God, and that with all his sacrifices, with all his hopes set on results of his development, he books no success. It vexes every individual that there is something in him which does not share in culture, technology, education, yet is evidently closely connected with God, with another world. And man wants to silence it, since he too is built with the divine stamp as Abel, just as Cain does after all. Now it says in the story that Cain pursues Abel to kill him, that is to silence him. In the end, he catches hold of him, and there ensues a fight. In this fight, Abel proves to be the stronger. He is on the verge of silencing Cain, but then Cain pleads for mercy. Again, the attitude of Agag, of Haman, of the squealing pig. Cain's life hangs by a thread. Abel feels pity with this struggling, normal to live, to maintain itself. At this moment, then Abel lets go. Cain rises and kills Abel. Naturally, the force of the nature merely noted he is weak. It has nothing to express compassion with. Compassion is an act which lies closely to the godly, to the non-measurable. It is that Abel should not have had compassion with this pleasant, promising living and development. Let it suffice. He has shown compassion, and that is how this world of the exile has got its power of resistance. The question cannot be solved here. Otherwise, one would ask after the Nistar here. Out of that Nistar, the world comes forth.